The war hall of the Zero Dominion was built to make visitors feel small. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadows. The floor was black metal, cold and smooth, reflecting the blue glow of alien symbols carved into the walls. Every sound echoed, even a single breath. At the center of the hall stood one human. His name was Jonah Hawley. He was thin now. Too thin. His prison clothes hung loose on his body, torn and stained with old blood. His boots were cracked. His hands were bare. No weapons. No armor. Nothing to protect him. Around him stood hundreds of alien guards. They were tall, wide, and covered in layered living armor that pulsed with energy. Their weapons were aimed at his heart. Jonah did not move. At the far end of the hall, high above everyone, sat the Alien Empress. Her throne was massive, built from dark alloy and the remains of conquered worlds. Bones, real bones, were woven into its design as decoration. She sat like a god, unmoving, watching. Her 4 eyes glowed slowly as they focused on the human. The guards waited. The entire galaxy waited. The Empress finally spoke, and her voice did not travel through the air. It entered the mind. "This is the last human," she said calmly. "The final echo of a dead species." Some guards clicked their jaws in amusement. Jonah felt his heart beating fast. Fear was there. He could feel it in his chest, heavy and cold. But fear was not new. Fear had been his companion since Earth burned. He lifted his head and looked directly at the Empress. That alone caused a noise. Ripple of surprise through the hall. "Kneel," the Empress commanded. Jonah thought of Earth. He thought of the blue sky over his childhood home, of the sound of rain on metal rooftops, of his sister laughing, of his mother holding his hand when the evacuation alarms failed. 7 hours. That was all it took for humanity's home to die. Jonah did not kneel. "I won't," he said. His voice was weak, but it did not break. The guards reacted instantly. Weapons charged. Energy hummed louder. The Empress raised one clawed hand. The guards froze. She leaned forward slightly, studying him like a strange insect that refused to die. "A human who still resists," she said. "Even after extinction." Jonah swallowed. His mouth was dry. "You killed my world," he said. "But you didn't erase us." The Empress's eyes narrowed. "Your kind fought," she replied. "Poorly, bravely, meaninglessly." Jonah clenched his fists. "We were never the strongest," he said. "We knew that." The Empress stood up. Her armor shifted as she moved, plates sliding over each other like living creatures. Blue energy flowed between them. This armor had never been pierced. Not by weapons. Not by bombs. Not by entire fleets. She stepped down from her throne. Each step shook the floor. "Then why?" she asked, walking closer. "Did you resist it all?" Jonah felt his legs tremble. Pain from old wounds flared. He forced himself to stand straight. "Because," he said quietly, "we don't know how to stop." The Empress stopped in front of him. She was enormous. Her shadow swallowed him. He could feel the heat from her armor. "Smell metal and ozone. You are nothing," she said. "A symbol to show the galaxy what happens when humans challenge gods." Jonah looked up into her glowing eyes. "Maybe," he said. The Empress tilted her head. "But symbols matter," Jonah continued. "And you brought me here for a reason." For the first time, the Empress smiled, a slow, cruel smile. "Yes," she said. "To end hope." Jonah closed his eyes for a brief moment. He was afraid, but beneath that fear was something stronger. Defiance. When he opened his eyes again, he was ready. The Empress raised her claw. The execution was about to begin. Before the Zero Dominion came, humanity believed it. Had time to explore, time to learn, time to make mistakes and fix them. They were wrong. The first alien ships appeared above Earth without warning. No messages. No demands. Just shadows falling across oceans and cities. Satellites went dark. Communication died. The sky itself seemed to break. Jonah Hawley was not a soldier that day. He was a rescue engineer, stationed on a small orbital platform. His job was simple: save people when machines failed. He believed in tools, in systems, in fixing what was broken. He watched Earth burn from orbit. The Zero weapons did not explode like human bombs. They erased. Entire cities faded into white light, then nothing. No ruins, no bodies. Just empty space where millions had lived moments before. Jonah screamed until his voice failed. Earth lasted 7 hours. When the last signal died, something inside humanity died too. But not everything. Humans fought back across the stars. Broken fleets. Old ships. Mining vessels turned into war machines. Farmers and engineers became soldiers overnight. Jonah joined them. He did not fight with pride. He fought with anger. He pulled survivors from wreckage. He sealed hull breaches with his own hands. He stayed behind so others could escape. Again and again, he chose to remain, not because he wanted to die, but because someone had to stand. The Dominion crushed them anyway. One by one, human colonies fell. Some burned. Some surrendered. Some disappeared without a trace. During the final battle near Proxima Centauri, Jonah's ship was disabled. Life support failed. Fires spread. He stayed behind to hold a door closed while others escaped. When the Zero boarded the ship, they expected screams. They found silence. Jonah was dragged out in chains. Barely alive, the Zero commanders did not understand why he fought. He was not strong, not fast, not special, but he would not stop staring at them. They brought him to the Empress as a curiosity, a final human, a message. As Jonah stood in the throne hall now, surrounded by enemies, those memories burned inside him. The Empress circled him slowly. "Your species was loud," she said. "You screamed into the void. You built weapons. You prayed to false hopes." Jonah's hands shook. "We loved," he said. "We built homes." She paused. "Homes are temporary," the Empress replied. "Empires are eternal." Jonah laughed softly, a broken sound. "So you think," he said. The Empress stopped in front of him. "You are afraid," she said. "Your body knows what is coming." Jonah nodded. "Yes." He admitted. Then he lifted his head. "But fear never stopped us." The guards shifted. Uneasily. The Empress's eyes glowed brighter. "Then show me," she said. She raised her arm. And the first strike fell. The first strike hit Jonah like a falling star. The Empress moved faster than any human could track. Her clawed hand slammed into his chest, and the force threw him across the cold black metal floor. The wind was knocked from his lungs. Pain tore through his ribs and shoulders. Every bone in his body screamed. Yet somehow, he got up. The guards stood in perfect stillness, weapons raised but unmoving. They had never seen a human endure such punishment. Their master had never needed to test someone like this. Jonah coughed blood, tasting iron on his tongue. His vision blurred, the edges of the hall spinning like a storm. His muscles were on fire. He felt the weight of every lost friend, every broken planet, every scream that had reached him across the void. And still he rose. "Why do you rise?" the Empress asked, her voice both in the hall and inside his mind. It carried no anger, only cold curiosity. Jonah's breath came in ragged gasps. He wiped blood from his mouth. "Because," he said, "because humans don't know how to stop." The Empress tilted her head, regarding him like a strange, fragile creature clinging to life against impossible odds. "You are a curiosity," she said. "Weaken yet. Defiant. Tell me, human, do you think courage is enough to save you?" Jonah shook his head. "No," he whispered. "It's not enough to save me. But it's enough to make you think twice." The Empress laughed a sound that made the walls tremble. It was cruel, mocking, and full of centuries of conquest. She stepped closer. Each of her movements made the metal floor vibrate. Her armor, alive with humming energy, shifted with a sound like grinding crystal. Every plate was smooth, sharp, untouchable. No weapon, no missile, no army had ever pierced it. And yet, Jonah did not flinch. The Empress raised her clawed hand again. This time, it struck toward his head. Jonah ducked instinctively. He felt a jolt of pain as the air pressure from the strike slammed against his spine. Sparks from her armor scattered across the floor. Every step, every swing. She was overwhelming. But Jonah remembered something. Earth, not the burning cities, not the chaos, not the loss. He remembered the little things. The laughter of children. The feel of rain on his face. The way people smiled at each other, even in fear. He thought of all those who had fallen believing humans were weak. And he thought of what he had survived. Pain and fear did not vanish, but they became fuel. He studied the Empress. Every strike left a tiny shimmer in the armor's seams. Every movement revealed patterns. There was one spot, so small it might have been a trick of light. A seam where two plates did not fully meet. Jonah's body screamed for him to fall, for him to give up. Every nerve, every bone, every muscle begged surrender. But he pushed down the instinct. The Empress swung again. Faster this time. He rolled under her arm, feeling the heat of her armor hum inches above him. The air smelled of ozone and metal. Sparks rained down, but he moved as if guided by instinct alone. In that moment, Jonah realized the impossible wasn't running from her. The impossible was standing and finding a way to touch her. And so he did. Jonah rose to his knees, fists clenched. The world narrowed to one point, the tiny seam in her armor. Every ounce of his being focused on it. Pain raced through his arms. He could feel his bones bending. Bruises spread like fire. His skin was already torn, but he moved. The Empress blinked in surprise, the first human reaction she had shown. She paused mid-swing. Her glowing eyes widened. Jonah's hand struck forward, bare, no weapon. No shield. Just human determination. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Empress felt resistance that hurt. The armor quivered under his touch. Sparks and energy arced over his arms. His hands burned, skin splitting, fingernails cracking. Pain so intense it felt like drowning. And yet, Jonah pushed deeper, because humans did not give up. Because endurance, not strength, defined them. The Empress gasped, stumbling backward. A sound like no machine or weapon had ever made escaped her. Throat, shock, confusion, fear. Jonah's hands pressed into the armor's seam, burning, bleeding, unrelenting. And in that single impossible instant, he realized something. Even gods could bleed. The hall went silent. The guards froze. Even the stars outside seemed to hold their breath. Jonah had survived worse. But this was different. He had touched the untouchable, and the universe would never forget it. Jonah could feel every heartbeat in his chest, every scream in his bones. The hall seemed to shrink around him. All he could see was the gap in the Empress armor, the tiniest seam, almost invisible, but alive with possibility. His hands were raw, skin shredded, fingers trembling with pain. Every instinct screamed to stop. Every muscle begged him to collapse. But he could not. Not now. The Empress raised her claws again, faster than a star could move. Sparks of blue energy danced along the floor. She was a living storm, each movement a promise of destruction. Her glowing eyes burned into his mind, commanding, mocking, daring him to fail. Jonah staggered forward. He felt each step like walking across broken glass. His vision blurred. Blood from his arms dripped onto the metal floor, hissing where it touched the energy. Pain tore through him, sharp enough to steal his breath, but he pushed through it. Human. The Empress hissed, her voice trembling now, a mix of surprise and disbelief. You cannot. He did not answer. Words were useless. Action was all that mattered. He leapt toward her. Time slowed in the human mind in moments like this. He saw the intricate patterns of her armor, the way plates shifted, the rhythm of her movements. He saw the tiny seam widen for a split second. That was all he needed. His hands slammed into the armor bearer, defiant, trembling, and he drove forward with everything he had. Pain exploded through his arms as the living metal fought him back. Sparks flew. Energy crackled. His fingernails shattered. Blood ran like rivers down his wrists, but he kept pushing. Then, the sound, a sharp crack like the breaking of a star. A sound no weapon, no fleet, no human machine had ever made. The armor split along the seam Jonah had targeted. A fissure opened wide enough for his hands to reach deeper. The Empress screamed. It was a sound no one in the galaxy had ever heard before. Not just rage, not just pain, but shock, raw and unfiltered. She stumbled backward, trying to recalibrate, but Jonah did not give her the chance. He pushed again. Fingers buried in the living metal, tearing through energy fields, piercing the armor as if it were paper. Every nerve, every tendon screamed. His body shook uncontrollably, but he drove forward, closer and closer to the core beneath her armor. The guards gasped. They had never seen a human act like this. They had never seen a being so small, so fragile, cause real damage to the Empress herself. Weapons wavered. Their perfect lines broke. Some even stepped back, uncertain, afraid of what defiance could do. The Empress tried to strike back. Her claws swung in arcs meant to crush him instantly. Sparks met sparks as Jonah dodged, rolled, and pushed harder. He felt burning energy lancing into his arms, yet he did not falter. His mind was a single thought: do not stop. Finally, with a last burst of strength, Jonah's hands reached the heart of the armor. The seam gave way completely. He felt the pulse of alien blood, dark and glowing, over his wrists, dripping to the floor. His hands were destroyed, shredded, numb, but he had pierced her. The Empress staggered back, wide-eyed, gasping. Her four glowing eyes, once full of certainty, now showed shock, fear, disbelief. 1,000 years of empire, of conquest, of power, and a single human had done what no weapon could. She could bleed. Jonah fell to his knees, arms useless, body trembling from pain. His chest heaved. He was on fire. He could barely move. Every bone and muscle screamed in agony. But he had done it. The impossible act. The hall was silent. The guards did not move. The stars outside seemed to hold their light. For the first time in a millennium, the Empress had lost control. You are impossible," she whispered. Her voice trembled, and her claws wavered. A being that had crushed worlds, that had never known defeat, now faced a human who refused to bend. Jonah's vision blurred with blood and sweat. He could not smile. He could not even speak. He only knelt there, battered and broken, letting the truth sink in. Humans were more than their bodies, more than their weapons. Humans endured, and endurance broke gods. The Empress stumbled backward, her massive form wobbling like a mountain struck by lightning. The glowing lines of her armor, which had pulsed with power for centuries, flickered wildly. Sparks erupted from the seams Jonah had pierced. For the first time, her authority faltered. She had ruled countless worlds, crushed countless species, and yet here, on this cold black floor, she was vulnerable. The hall was silent. Even the Zira guards, perfect soldiers who had never questioned orders, froze. Some blinked, unsure if they had seen reality or a trick of their eyes. Their master, untouchable for 1,000 years, was bleeding. A human, a single, broken, bare-handed human had pierced her armor. Jonah dropped to his knees, exhausted beyond words. Pain consumed him, fire running through every nerve, but he did not fall. Not yet. His breathing was ragged, but his mind was sharp. He looked up at the Empress. Her glowing eyes were wide, unshielded for the first time. Fear mixed with disbelief, the rawest emotion a conqueror could feel. You should be dead, she hissed. Her voice wavered, almost a whisper, but it carried across the hall, reaching every soldier, every officer, every mind present. How are you still alive? Jonah coughed. Blood streaked his chin, and his arms hung useless at his sides. He could barely lift them, but he raised his head, staring into her eyes. Humans survive, he rasped. Not because we're strong, but because we refuse to stop. You can break our bodies, but not our will. A ripple ran through the guards. Whispers, quiet at first, spread like wildfire. They had always been told humans were weak, soft, predictable. And yet, here was proof to the contrary. A human, smaller, frail, battered, standing despite impossible odds. Standing because he refused to kneel. The Empress tried to regain control. She swung her massive claw in a strike meant to crush him, meant to end the defiance that had shaken her world. Sparks flew as her weapon met the floor just inches from Jonah. He flinched but did not move. He would not give her the satisfaction. You dare. She growled, her voice trembling with rage and fear. You dare to touch me? Dare to hurt me? Jonah's lips twisted into a grim, bloodied smile. I didn't dare, he said. I just did what had to be done. Pain screamed through his arms, every nerve aflame, but he had reached the impossible. He had broken the unbreakable. The Empress's armor, wounded, struggled to reconfigure itself. Plates shifted, energy flared, but her system was damaged. A human had entered the heart of her power. For centuries, no enemy had come close. Now she staggered, unsure whether to attack or retreat. The guards hesitated. The soldiers who had once been certain of victory now questioned everything. Could a human really threaten the Empress? Could one fragile being challenge 1,000 worlds? For the first time, doubt crept into the hearts of the Zira Dominion. Jonah rose slightly, leaning on what strength he had left. Every breath hurt. Every movement was agony. But he looked into the Empress's eyes with a steadiness that no pain could shake. This isn't just about me, he said, voice hoarse but loud enough to echo through the hall. It's about every human you tried to destroy, every world you tried to crush, every life you thought worthless. We are not nothing. The Empress fell to one knee, the massive throne behind her casting her in shadow. Her armor sparked and hissed, and the energy that had once made her untouchable now faltered. She looked at him with a mixture of fury, confusion, and something new, fear. Jonah took a step closer, trembling, broken, bleeding, but unbowed. He had no weapons, no backup, nothing but his own body and the will to survive. And yet, in that moment, he was the most dangerous being in the galaxy. You will pay, the Empress whispered, but the words lacked the certainty they once carried. She had ruled without fear for 1,000 years. Now she knew that even gods could be wounded. Even conquerors could bleed. Jonah's chest rose and fell, exhausted, every breath a battle. He lowered his gaze briefly, looking at his destroyed hands. Fingers mangled, blood everywhere. Pain so intense it could have killed him. But he had done the impossible. He had pierced the armor of a god, and in doing so, he had begun to shatter the foundations of the Zira Dominion itself. The guards stepped back, still unsure of what to do. The hall was silent except for the distant hum of failing armor and Jonah's ragged breaths. Somewhere deep in the shadows, the echoes of rebellion stirred. For the first time, a human had shown the galaxy that the Empress could be defeated. Jonah did not celebrate. He could not. He only knelt there, broken but unbowed, staring at the once untouchable ruler of 1,000 worlds. The impossible had happened, and everything was about to change. The story spread faster than any fleet, faster than any message. Across countless systems, from the frozen moons of Arkan to the floating cities of Zyra Prime, beings whispered the same words. A human had pierced the Empress armor. A human broken, bleeding, barehanded had defied a conqueror who had ruled the stars for 1,000 years. Jonah Hale did not escape the throne hall. He did not need to. His act had become something larger than himself. It was not about survival anymore. It was about hope. Every soldier, every civilian, every captive in the Dominion knew now that even the strongest could fall. Even gods could bleed. Rebellions began quietly at first. Small strikes, sabotages on remote outposts, messages scrawled in hidden corners of conquered worlds. At first, they were tiny sparks, humans, aliens, even those who had been broken by the Dominion, daring to resist in small ways. But sparks become flames when the wind of inspiration blows. Jonah lay in a medical chamber far below the Empress' shattered throne. His body was battered beyond repair. His arms, destroyed while piercing the armor, were wrapped in energy bandages that barely held. Pain radiated through every nerve. He could feel life slipping away, yet his mind was clear. The galaxy had already shifted. The Empress, once untouchable, now retreated to her fortress in orbit. Her armor was cracked, systems failing. Her guards, once perfect, no longer followed orders without hesitation. Doubt had entered their hearts. Fear had a strange power, more contagious than any disease. Even loyalty falters when hope rises. Across the galaxy, species that had been slaves, oppressed, or forgotten began to rise. Planets that had surrendered years ago now sent fleets into open rebellion. Systems once loyal to the Dominion shifted allegiances. The Dominion itself, a machine of fear and death, began to crumble. One human, one broken, ragged, defiant human had ignited the first spark. Jonah, barely conscious, watched the reports come in. Hollywood showed strikes on Dominion supply chains. Captives escaping. Entire colonies refusing orders. Every message carried the same name, the human who stood when no one else could. He closed his eyes briefly, letting himself remember Earth, the oceans, the forests, the cities that had burned in 7 hours. And he remembered every person he could not save, every life that was gone, every planet reduced to ash. He had survived while so many had not, yet now, through this impossible act, their memory became fuel for the galaxy. Pain racked his body again, and he cried out softly. His hands were destroyed. His chest ached. Every breath felt like fire. But even as his strength failed, the galaxy gained strength. Even as his body broke, hope spread like wildfire. For the first time, the Zyra Dominion realized something terrifying. Power alone could not hold the galaxy. Fear alone could not stop resistance. And one small fragile species, humans, had shown that courage, endurance, and defiance were weapons no empire could destroy. Jonah whispered to himself, his voice faint but steady. We endure. Even when it seems impossible. Even when we are broken. He could feel the universe changing, little by little. Systems that had been silent now spoke of rebellion. Worlds that had bowed now rose. Alien leaders who had never questioned the Dominion now began to plan for a future without fear. And all of it traced back to a single act, a human piercing armor that no machine, no army, no being had ever pierced before. Jonah's eyes drifted closed, not from sleep, but from exhaustion. The pain was unbearable, but he was not afraid. He had done what he had come to do. The act, the defiance, the impossible choice, had become bigger than himself. It would live long after he did. Across the stars, whispers turned to roars. The galaxy remembered humans. They remembered what humans could do when they refused to kneel, when they refused to surrender, when they refused to die quietly. And somewhere, deep in the Dominion's heart, the Empress realized that the galaxy had changed forever. Humans were no longer prey. Humans were a warning. Jonah smiled faintly, pain and blood and exhaustion all around him. He had not saved everyone. He had not rebuilt what was lost. But he had given the galaxy something far more powerful than fleets or weapons. Hope. And hope was unstoppable. Centuries passed, and Jonah Hale became more than a man. He became a story, a memory, a warning. Across hundreds of worlds, his name was whispered in the streets, sung in the halls of freed cities, carved into stone on the planets that had once bowed to the Zyra Dominion. Children learned of him not as a soldier, not as a hero in shining armor, but as a human who stood when the universe expected him to fall. Statues were built. But unlike other monuments, Jonah was never shown with weapons. His hands were empty, broken, bloodied. His posture was bent with pain, yet his head was held high. One hand reached forward, as if touching a distant star. The words beneath each statue were simple, yet they carried the weight of history. Humans endure. Humans defy. Humans are unstoppable. The galaxy remembered. Species that had been slaves for generations sold their children of the day. A human bled the Empress. Young soldiers, preparing to fight impossible battles, repeated Jonah's words in their minds. We endure. Even when broken, we rise. Even when fear grips our hearts. On Zira Prime, long after the Dominion fell, the remains of the Empress throne hall still stood. Cracked armor plates lay scattered across the floor, humming faintly with the remnants of ancient energy. Scholars came from distant systems to study it, but everyone who entered the hall instinctively bowed, not out of fear, but out of awe. They understood the story the broken walls whispered. One human had changed everything. Jonah's name became a symbol. Not for war, not for conquest, but for the power of will, the strength of spirit, and the courage to stand alone. Entire fleets of humans, rebuilt from ashes, named their lead ships after him. Planets dedicated days of remembrance. Songs were sung to honor the human who had pierced a god's armor bare-handed. Even the Zira, once conquerors of worlds, began to teach their young about Jonah Hale, not as a threat, but as a lesson. Power without respect, domination without challenge, could always fall. Even the mightiest could be undone by endurance, courage, and a refusal to surrender. Jonah himself had not survived long after his impossible act. His body had been too broken. The medical teams could not save him. His hands, destroyed in piercing the Empress armor, were gone. His lungs, chest, and every organ screamed their defeat. But as he lay in the cold, quiet chamber, he smiled faintly. Pain had been endless, but the act had mattered. He had changed the universe. He had done what humans had always done. They were not the strongest species. They were not the fastest. They were not the most advanced. But they endured. They survived when all odds were against them. They fought with their hearts, not just their weapons. They rose when they were supposed to fall. And in that rising, even the strongest empires could break. The galaxy learned that lesson. Slowly, then quickly. One planet at a time. One system at a time. One species at a time. The dominion that had once seemed unshakable crumbled. New alliances formed. New governments arose. Freedom and hope spread where fear had once reigned. And at the center of it all, burned the memory of a single human who refused to bow. Centuries later, the story of Jonah Hale inspired poets, leaders, and warriors across species. Every time someone faced an impossible challenge, they remembered the broken human who had pierced the armor of a god. Every time fear threatened to paralyze, they whispered his words in their minds. Fear is not the end. Pain is not the end. As long as you endure, you are unstoppable. And somewhere, in the ruins of a throne hall far from Earth, the cracked piece of living armor still lay, a silent testament to a single act of courage that had shifted the balance of the galaxy. A reminder that humans, small, fragile, mortal humans, could change the course of history with nothing but will and heart. Jonah Hawley was gone. But humanity's spirit was eternal. And the universe would never forget. HFY.